afternoon, folks, and welcome back to the Noahide Input and another lesson with Rabbi Moshe Shulman, who's been teaching us how living the Noahide life and how important it is and the specifics. And we were planning on doing some review, but I think Rabbi Shulman's got some wonderful things he wants to share. So without any further ado, we'll just jump right into it and let the rabbi do his thing. Rabbi Shulman, how you doing today all the way in New York?
Baruch Hashem, everything's fine here. What happened is there's been a lot of discussions on Facebook around some of the issues we've been talking about, and I figured, you know what, maybe it's a good idea before we go into our next thing, and sort of to close this up. I mean, it is a little bit of a review, but it's not going to be so much review because not everything we talked about I'm going to talk about, but a number of issues were brought up supposedly that are of a challenge to what we've been talking about before. So I'm going to deal with some of those. But before I start, there's a couple things I wanted to say first in case the time runs out and we don't have time.
We got as much time as you need.
Well, no, it's not really true, but can't do that. There's a certain length of time people start, not having concentration after that.
Attention, span.
So anyways, there are a few things coming up that will be of interest. Of course, we're probably going to finish either this week or next week, in which case I'll be taking off. But the week after that is Hanukkah. So we talked about maybe doing something then. I threw some ideas by you. The question is, we have to find out from you how early you could make it, like 5:30, 6 o'clock New York time. Is that a possibility?
Oh, you know what, Rabbi? I mean, I move at my own schedule. I mean, I'm spending a lot of time working on some really neat stuff for the future, and
Okay.
I'm excited.
Okay.
So I can adjust my schedule.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. Maybe I'll do something. Have to see. Anyways, haven't decided exactly what I wanted to do. Have a little bit of a talk, haven't decided. The other thing is that in January I'm going to be in Israel, so that it may. Remember, I told you I want to take like a month break afterwards to prepare for my next lesson all the time. That gives me time to look over it. I prepare whenever I give a talk. I prepare. I have a Kabbalah from my Rebbe who got from his Rebbe that even if you know the share you're going to give, you still sit down and review it before you start it. So I always try and review everything before I'm going to do it. So, anyways, that's it. The next actually lessons that come up is an overall of the Noahide Laws, an overview of the Noahide Laws, and some important principles that apply to the laws in everyday life. A simple one: what if you're forced to violate one of the laws? Somebody comes to a gun to your head, for example. Okay, so we're going to deal with a lot of interesting issues on the legal, dealing with the laws, what each of the laws are, are you allowed to do more, what you're allowed to do, how you're allowed, what there is. It's just anything that has to do with the basic parts of the law that before we got into each one by themselves. The third lesson, by the way, is going to be on issues that have to do with Hashem, the two prohibitions, idol worship and cursing Hashem. And we'll get into a whole bunch of things in there.
Oh, exciting. Sounds great.
But we'll discuss each and every one of them as we come on. Again, more towards the ideas behind things and different things that affect your life that come on. Okay, that is basically what I wanted to say. If we want to do more review, I might come next week to review. If not, maybe we'll just break a week and do something on Hanukkah. We'll have to see. We'll just talk it over the week.
Yeah, I keep asking people to send some questions. You're very clear. You're pointing out all the sources. So we don't have a ton of questions coming forward, but,
Right.
We do appreciate everything that you're taking the time to share.
Okay.
I think, though, if you're going to talk about, when is it permissible that somebody break one of the 7 Noahide laws? And the way I look at it in Judaism is there not 3 categories. I think you touched on them briefly.
Yeah. Let's. I don't want to get ahead. I'm very
Okay.
because if you jump around, you never really understand what you're supposed to. So each thing is, in a sense, builds on each other. You can't learn the laws themselves unless you learn some general principles behind it. Just like you can't really discuss the laws until you understand some of the general principles I try to bring now. So lesson one is general principles of just how to look at the whole thing as being a non-Jew in general. And then we'll go into the actual 7 laws of what they are, just what they are, just without going into any kind of specifics, and some other things that have to do around the concept of law with the Noahide. What does it mean to be? What does it mean that you're required to not do certain things? What's the whole concept behind it? Okay.
Okay, that's exciting.
So it's a totally different type of thing. Okay. Now, among the discussions we've had before is we discussed that there's basically different words in the Tanakh in Judaism to refer to non-Jews. We refer to the non-Jews in general as goy or other names. Sometimes they call akam for any non-Jew. Okay. Then there's Ben Noach is a non-Jew who keeps the 7 commandments, and the Ger Toshiv is when there would be Yovel. It's somebody who went before based in and then now there have been a number of discussions over the last few weeks saying, well, there's like 5 different types of Ben Noach and 27 different types of Ger Toshiv and all kinds of. Besides the fact that it's totally confusing,
right?
It has no source in Chazal. I'm actually going to show later on one of the errors. One of the errors is from. I actually found out today. I actually figured out finally where these errors come from. In Avodah Zarah 64, which we actually learned before. So I'll actually explain to you why the error comes out. I mean, Matt is the main source, but Russell, all the other guys talk about. Okay. Now, the source for these that they even quotes in themselves is the Ritva. Ritva is one of very, very important Rishonim. His commentaries are beautiful. They're very simple. They're straight to the point. But in them, you can see his vast knowledge of Talmud. We divide the rabbis into certain generations, certain things. So there's a Tan is from the Mishnah, a Moed is from the Gemara. And you can tell the difference between one and the other. The qualitative material, what they do, their grasp of the things is different. Then the Gaonim actually put everything together. And then comes the Rishonim. The Rishonim go through the Talmud, like Tosfos from the Rishonim. And they go through and they clarify different things. And from their vast knowledge of all of Shasta together, they can bring from different places together, show, well, this is how these things all really fit together, the whole thing together. Then they come to the Achronim. Now, the Achronim are later, after from the 15th century on, and unlike the Rishonim, they don't have the same grasp. They much longer, much more, you might call it nitpicking. They go much more into different things. Not that same clear idea of addition. The addition, you could tell addition just from reading it. If you
so the Rishonim, they cover a period from when till when? You're saying up to about the 1500s, but
the last Goyen was Rav Hai Gaon. He died, I believe, 1000 something. After that was the 4 Yitzchaks. After the 4 Yitzchaks is basically comes up to Rashi's time. Rashi was like the second generation after that, the second generation of Rishonim. And the Rishonim last until basically the time of the Shulchan Aruch, Yosef Kar. That's basically considered the time when it goes the exile, the exile from Spain. That period of time is sort of looked at as, you could see there's been a change in the quality. I mean, same thing with today. I mean, in the future,
so the Rambam right on the edge of that is what you're
saying.
Rambam
is right in the middle of the Rishonim.
Okay,
he's one of the key Rishonim.
And Nachmanides?
Yeah. What? Nachmanides was about 100 years later.
Yes.
1300s. Yeah. Still story. So a lot of people already talk that they're going to start talking about the before World War II and after World War II, the significant change in the quality of and the depth of knowledge from the people from before the war and after the war. I knew Gedolim and Rabbis from before the war, and the next generation. And even though those our generation, they're great people, but there's a qualitative difference you can see. And eventually what's going to happen is we'll probably talk about how this was, I don't know what they're going to call it after Achronim, but there's been a significant change in the quality and the depth and breadth of learning. Nowadays, people are in Daf Yomi and they have an art scroll Talmud that they look at, and all kinds of things. Whereas before the war they didn't have it, and people who knew Shas knew it. We learned later. There were people at 9 years old who knew Shas, all of the Talmud, whereas nowadays that's totally unheard of because of the way our education system. There's a whole bunch of things. So we're going to look at that as being a difference. I'm just mentioning to now. So who the Ritva? The Ritva was one of the Shainim, meaning that his grasp of the material is far superior to anything we would have. When you look into him, you have to look at it. And so what I want to do is, this is quoted a lot of times. It's in Makkas. This is my copy, by the way. I don't know if you know that. I have commentaries for the Masechtas I've learned in depth. So in Masechtas Makkas 9a, there's a discussion there that mentions Ger Toshev. And this is one of them that I've heard from some of the Ger people talking about. But they totally misunderstand what's going on in the Ritva. The Ritva has a very good question. He's talking that the Talmud itself there is discussing, I'll say that because if I look inside, it'll take much longer if I read everything inside. There's some things I'm going to read inside, but then not that. The Talmud there is talking, the Tractate Malkos is discussing about various punishments, what happens, talks about exile that goes, if you murder somebody, go into exile, if it's accidental, non-accidental. There's a whole bunch of interesting stories, interesting halacha things that have to do with that kind of legal material. So there's a discussion of what happens if a Jew kills a non-Jew, does it go into exile or not, what kind of punishment he gets for that, what if a non-Jew. So anyways, so the question is if a Ger Toshev kills a Jew kills a Toshev, what the story is. So the Gemara says, Am a Ger Toshev Kittihi. A Ger Toshev is a Kitti. Now the word Kitti is a word that's there a lot of time. The Kittim originally referred to those people who, when Yehuda, the southern kingdom, went into the Babylonian exile, that they were settled. They were called the Kittim. And the people like the Samaritans were supposedly their descendants. Now, we won't talk about that, but basically they're not considered Jewish, and they weren't considered Jewish, but they did keep some Jewish laws. So they were called Kittim. And the Gemara is saying that a Ger Toshev is like a Kitti, meaning that he has the same law of somebody who's not Jewish. A Kitti is another name that's used for somebody who's a goy, not Jewish. That's what he's talking about. So the Ritva says it's not a very long Ritva, but I can say that. Gimel Shonis Namud B'Kittim. There are 3 languages used with the Kittim. Now, you should see right away that some mistakes that I see people saying is that these are like independent categories as opposed to be overlapping. Like instead of being, it's like boxes. This is one box, this is another box, this is another box. But that's not what it is. And we'll see very clearly in Mitzvah. There's a big box, which is a non-Jew. There's another box inside. There's a big circle. Then there's another circle inside, and there's another circle inside that. So he says, Gimel Shayis Nomer B'Kittim. There's 3 types of Kittim. Ger Toshev Ibn Noach B'Kitti. A Ger Toshev Ben Noach Kitti. Ger Toshev, what's he? He Kabel based in Shayisol L'Kaim Sheva Mitzvahs and Tzava B'nei Noach K'da'is of Avodah Zorah. He's talking about in Avodah Zorah. He's talking about 64b. That he's saying here that the halacha is like the Chachomim, as I mentioned before when I learned it, that the Ritva is, it's not my but just I don't need the support, but the Ritva says it also because anybody who knows how to learn knows that the halacha is like the Chachomim. So he says clearly, just like it's there, that a Ger Toshev means somebody who's had that kabul. Now we're talking about Archen. He's not talking about the Inion here. The idea here about whether we have one today, he's just saying this is what the categories are. But that's only when Yovel is. It was a Misli Shaisa B'Naini, it was Nikr Toshev. And because of that, that he's accepted the 7 mitzvahs, mitachas yaisha benayni, he's allowed to sit amongst us, meaning he's about to live amongst us. That's why he calls him a Toshav. Toshav means a resident.
Exactly.
Why? Toshav? Yeah. Because if he has accepted the 7 commandments before a Beis Din, then he's allowed to live amongst us. Okay? That's where it comes from. The issue of Archan that it's not allowed is different. The Kiven Shekabo Beis Din, he Nikra B'Sheva. Okay. He Shekabu Beis Din. He Nikra B'Sheva mitzvahs Eiga mitzava v'oisa. He's called somebody, because he accepted these, he's called somebody who's been commanded and does it. Now this refers to something which we're going to discuss a little bit later. There's a note in the art school about the Chazon Ish that because the non-Jews before the Torah was given didn't follow the 7 mitzvahs, they no longer were, it was taken away. So there was no longer commanded.
Yeah, you've mentioned that.
Okay. Now what happens when the Torah is given? If they do it, they're still not commanded to do it, but the Torah, there's a requirement, but it's not like a command. It's like, like a rabbinic type of thing. It's not that. But if they have a kabula from a Beis Din, if they have an acceptance from a Beis Din, then it changes it from not being commanded to being commanded and doing. And that, by the way, we do today anyways. Even though it can't make a ger toshav, we do it. Why? Because according to many sources, that if you stand before a Beis Din of 3, say you get 3 Jewish, rabbis from Chabad, say, listen, I'm going to keep the 7 mitzvahs, it changes your status vis-a-vis those commandments. Because this is, from this we're commanded to give them sustenance, keep them support. Because excuse me, I can't see this here. And it's in any case, we're not allowed to cause any kind of arguments with them. And even more, we're not allowed to throw them into a pit so that they should die. We don't have to kill them. They're not considered violating the law, so we don't have to. Ibn Noach, what is he? He should go kabbalah bebeis din. He's someone who has not accepted before din, a court. But he keeps them by himself. Okay? He's keeping the commandments. He's keeping all 7 commandments, but he hasn't, gone to a court of any kind. Vihi naden bam kamisha aina matava oisa, and he's considered somebody who does it but hasn't been commanded of it. Okay, because this is he's bringing the Gemara in Bava Kama, which talks about how Hashem saw that they didn't keep the commandments, so he took it with him. And this person, we're not required to give him sustenance. So the commandment of giving sustenance would only apply if someone's a ger toshav. Since there's no ger toshav today, we're not commanded. But the Rav Paskim follow the Rabbin in saying that we are allowed to live among non-Jews, because since they're not worshiping idols anymore, if you take the mitzvahs b'nei Noach, you're not worshiping idols, so you can live amongst us. That's more rabbinic, it's not the biblical part. And we're also not allowed to cause any pain, any arguments with someone who's keeping 7 laws, even if he doesn't have kabbalah. Okay, keeping to self also because he does that. So even somebody who keeps the 7 commandments, even if he doesn't have kabbalah, we still treat him with respect and we treat him very well. Okay. This always, it actually comes in hulacha. If there was something that did in hulacha, we talk about. The only thing is that a ger toshav is there's no ger toshav today, but he's not talking about that. Even though he's not commanded, he does get a reward for it. It's a little bit, as it says there. And Kitty, meaning a non-Jew, whatever name, he's somebody who doesn't keep the commandments, doesn't make a mission. He's somebody you're allowed to throw him into a hole. We don't pass him like that, actually, but that's a different thing. Okay, so that's basic what it says. What do we see here? We don't see 25 categories of Ben Noach. We don't see 35 categories of ger toshav. We don't see anything like that. We see there are 3 things. Mm-hmm. There is a ger toshav who has gone before a Beis Din and keeps the mitzvahs. 7 mitzvahs. He's gone to a Beis Din and said, I'm going to do it, and that's it. There is a Ben Noach who keeps the mitzvahs but has not had Kabbalah. He just does it, whatever. And then there's everybody else who's a Kitti. So if you look at it, you can see very clearly there's a Kitti is every non-Jew. Within that, there's the class of Ben Noach, which is a non-Jew who's keeping the commandments, and within that, the Getoshim. Now, that's a litva. That's a litva, that's halucha, that's what everybody who knows how to learn knows what it is. There are basically three categories like that. Now, nowadays, what we do is essentially, we'll see, I'll get up to that. I'm not going to jump ahead myself. Okay, so one thing I wanted to do, I forgot my chimish. Why didn't I have my chimish here? Okay, 1 second.
Sorry, I'm just answering a question.
In this week's parsha, there came up something very interesting. Now, what you have to understand, what the Litva is talking about, and we're talking about is not the translation of the word or how it's used in the Tanakh. We're talking about the halachic implications of it.
Right.
In halacha, there's three categories. There is a goy or a kitti or an akam or whatever you want to call that category there. It's all the same thing. Doesn't make a difference. It's all the same thing. Then above that is a ben noach, meaning a non-Jew who is aware of it. Among the categories of ben noach, for example, the Rambam says that you're not a ben noach unless you do it according to the Torah. But,
right.
Okay. And then there's a Gertoshev who does it when there will be a yovo. He could become that halacha category of Gertoshev. Until then, he doesn't. He's still a ben noach. And we do certain things with ben noach, which we're going to come to later on. I mean, this is all we talked about before, but that's it.
Okay, Rabbi, I'm chatting with a friend of mine online there a little bit, and she's asking questions about there not being a bet din right now. And
no, it's not the base din, it's the yovel.
Right. So I'm trying to explain the difference. Maybe you could clarify. So three rabbis can swear.
Gemara Archen. Okay, it's simply like this. The law of Gertoshev is related to the law of a Jewish slave. The Gemara learns out from the similarity of words that the law of one is similar to the law of other. A Jewish slave cannot exist today because there is a law that he goes out after 50 years. Now, after 7 years, if you're a Jewish slave, it's partial mishputim. After 7 years, you're supposed to go out, or at the 7th year, wherever it comes in. Now, you do have an option. If you want to, you could remain a Jewish slave. To your master. That will continue. But when Yovel comes, there's nothing you can do. Then you have to go out. Even if you don't want to, you become freed in the Yovel. Because of that, a Jewish slave we can only maintain those laws when there's a Yovel. Because otherwise, somebody would be a slave forever, and a Jewish person is not allowed to be a slave forever.
Of course not.
Okay? So a Jew is not allowed to hold a Jew as a slave forever. He could be 7 years. There's various reasons why he can become a slave, whatever. He could sell himself or be sold because he couldn't pay off for theft or something like that. Okay? But because there's no yovel, you can't have a Jewish slave. Okay?
Okay. But just for Noahide, Rabbi, I don't mean to, just for Noahide, is there a benefit for them to go before three rabbis?
Oh, absolutely. Because there are many poskim that I've seen that say that even today, if a ben noach goes before a three rabbis, it changes him to be mitzav v'oseh. It makes it as if he's doing, because what he's doing is he's taking an oath, and by taking an oath, that makes it on him a commandment to fulfill his word. Okay,
there you go.
So because
I hope that helps, Veronica.
It's not everybody holds that way. But there are a significant number that do, and that's certain. I personally feel it's good for many reasons. Even psychologically, it's very good. When you go,
for sure,
it affects you psychologically also. But halachically, there are significantly a large amount of people who poskim. I haven't counted the numbers or the it's not just the numbers. It's the quality of who says it, the strength of who says it. But it seems to me that most of them talk about, you should do it now today because it does it. And as far as I know, Rabbi Sharkey says that. I think Schwartz does it also. I think Rabbi Weiner has something about that also. The reason is not because there's a Gertoshev, because there can't be a Gertoshev because there's no Yovel.
Exactly.
The Gemara has just like we can't have a Jewish slave. Mm-hmm. However, it's because what it does, is it changes your mitzvah observant to be considered that, because since you've made an oath, you're going to do what that does. Okay, so what I want to talk about, what I wanted to do is to clarify a certain thing. Okay, when we're using these words, we're using them because they have a halachic context. It does not have to do with how they're used in the Torah or the Tanakh. It's how it's used in the Talmud and the legal codes. Okay, and my example, I was learning Chumash this week, of course, and it says here in chapter 35:11, "V'yom Eloi Elokim," God said to Jacob, "Ani Kel Shaddai, I'm Kel Shaddai. Parevai, you should be fruitful, multiply. Goy v'kahal goyim yemamechu, a goy and a congregation of goyim." Now, obviously, Hashem wasn't telling Jacob that his children would become non-Jewish. So what does Rashi say? That's what Rashi's question is. So goy in singular is referring to Benjamin, who was not born yet, and goyim, which is plural, is referring to Manasseh and Ephraim, who also weren't born yet, because Manasseh and Ephraim become two of the tribes. So these are three of the tribes that come out later on. So that's what he's saying. The point I'm trying to say is, even though in a legal context, goy means a non-Jew, however, if you're going to pick up the Tanakh, the Torah and something, it says goy, that must mean the person worships idols or something like that. No, it doesn't mean that. Goy means a nation. You have to know what the context is. I see a lot of times you see in these Ger people will pick up, it says Ger, so it must be referring to Ger Toshav or something. No. You have to see what the context is. Look into Rashi, look into commentators, what they say there. They'll tell you which one it means. Don't read it on your own. This is not Bible study like you had when you were Christians. That's not the way it works. It's not what falls into your head.
We appreciate you clarifying, Rabbi.
Yeah, okay. So that's the Ritva. The Ritva is extremely important, and it's exactly what I was teaching when we did it before, that there are different languages, but there are three things. And again, Ben Noach is actually the word Noahide came from that. I didn't invent it. The original people who started using the name for themselves, Noahide, basically took it because of Ben Noach. That's all. But that is one of the three classifications, legal classifications within Jewish law, and it's accepted by everyone. It's from the Ritva. But I'm not saying it's not just because of Ritva. There are things in Ritva that aren't accepted as halacha. I'm just pointing out that, in fact, that is what a halacha is. Now, these inyonim, sometimes you'll hear people say, well, brisk has it own way. So what I wanted to do is, as non-Jews, hearing this, okay, I'm following this rabbi, of course, and it sounds right. And, this is obviously the, and I know that rabbis disagree. I mean, look at Rabbi Shulman. He looks different than other people, and this rabbi looks different. So obviously that they have differences amongst themselves. Maybe what we're talking about is, according to this one, it's that. But maybe there's something else. Maybe brisk has its own different views. So what I decided to do is, I look back in their own sources. Now there's two sources I'm using here. Both of them I know have been used by them. One is a letter from the Griz. Griz was Yitzchak Zev Soloveitchik. I do not know how many generations back he is from Rav Aaron. I never really asked, or from Rav Moshe David in Yerushalayim, the Brisker of now, who should have a Lefi Yerushalayim. He's not very well. So he's one of the Gedolim from the Rosh Yeshivas in Yerushalayim. So he's not well now. But okay, I don't know how many generations back, but Yitzchak Zev was a very big. The Griz was his stuff is it's bris Torah, it's a certain derech limit. Each one has its own way of presenting stuff, and it's like if you're a chef, you go to different chefs cook things differently, but since you're a chef, you can enjoy each one. That's the same thing about people who learn Torah. If you learn Torah, just like I mentioned, the Ritva is addition. You enjoy addition, even if it's different. Brisk has its own way of approaching things, and it's also very beautiful and it's very fun to learn. It's fun to learn. It's not what I usually learn, because I usually learn for different. My purpose in learning is a little bit different, but sometimes I pick it up, and so I picked this up. That there's a letter from the Griz, and I'm also that book that is quoted from them, also from Rav Aaron Soloveitchik. It's called Od Yisrael Yosef Benichai. I'm going to talk about that also.
Excellent.
What he says. Now, the Griz has a discussion. There's it's a letter at the back. I don't know if it's a tshuva, a response to somebody, or if it's just a letter that's in the back of one of his form. It's a very famous one. So I'm just going to read just a little bit of it, because it can get very, very in. He's not Rishon, so it's not as clear the language. You have to think a little bit more about it. Rishon, the Ritva when read it was, anybody could read. You read the Ritva, oh, it makes sense right away. But Tosfos is also not so very easy all the time.
No. Different eras, right? And it especially for us.
The Ritva was about the same time as Tosfos, but it's a different style, different points. Okay. So he's saying that somebody, I cannot make out, this is a print from a print, whatever. So there's some letters I can't make out who it is. And he's talking about somebody, I don't know what the name is. Rav Gimel, I don't know. Okay. So somebody who is writing something with regards to this. So it says here, the Inion Ger Tosef, and with regards to the Ger Tosef, the item of Ger Tosef, the Godamya Kabbalusa Legatus, his Kabbalah, what he accepts from the court, is not like that, like conversion. When a Ger Tzedek goes to the court, it's totally different kind of concept of conversion than a Ger Tosef. It's not the same thing. He's not converting.
Right.
A Ger Tzedek,
exactly.
Okay.
It's a huge point.
It's not. I don't say. I just say what other people say. This is halacha l'maaseh. This is really what it is. Okay. So when there would be, let's say there's yovel today, and the ger toshev goes to the court, it's not like someone who actually converts goes to the court. It's not like the kabbalah for conversion like a ger tzedek does. Because through that. When a person becomes a ger tzedek, when he converts, when he accepts upon sin, he becomes a Jew mamish. Yisrael. He becomes part of Israel. 100%.
Yes,
interesting.
that's key.
In this chayav b'mitzvahs, and is required to do the mitzvahs like any other Jew. He's exactly the same. Avo, hucha, but here, haregam koydem kabula, even before he went to the Beis Din to take his kabula on the mitzvahs, mechayev he. Design mitzvahs. He was also required to do it. Remember, the Ben Noach is also required in the mitzvahs. And the Ger Toshev, he didn't change his requirement. From before he had the Kabbalah until after, he didn't change anything. That's what he's saying here. Okay? He's exactly the same beforehand as afterwards. Beforehand he was required, and afterhand he's required. There's a little more effect of it from afterwards, but basically he's the same person. It's not like where it says in Yevumas that if you become a convert, that you're like a newborn child and you have absolutely no relationship, to the point that, according to the Torah, from conversion, you could marry your mother and sister. The rabbis forbid it, by the way, just so you should know.
Of course.
Because it wouldn't look very nice. How, somebody who converts so he can marry his sister or something. No. The rabbis don't allow that. But theoretically, because your conversion makes you totally separated from it. Bevadai, and so he continues, he just says something. Bevadai haduvakain. It's certain that the thing is just like this, what he said. The based in the Kabbalah, the acceptance that Ben Noach does to become a ger toshev by based in is nothing like a conversion. He's exactly the same. He has not added any kind of requirements whatsoever. He can do the exactly same thing as beforehand. He can't do anything more. He's exactly the same person. The only difference is, like the Ritva says, the only difference is it's considered. It becomes whatever laws of ger toshev would be around, which he's got to live with us and stuff like that. That's the only thing that happens. But existentially, it's the same exact person.
Right.
Yeah. Certainly like that. Certainly like that. The Inion here mitzvahs, and with regard to being required to keep mitzvahs, there was nothing that new that occurred because of this acceptance that he went before court. Nothing. He's exactly the same. Nothing, no more requirements was added to him. He doesn't have to keep Shabbos because he took it. Nothing. Okay? He's the same as he was before. Just like when it was Ben Noach beforehand, he was required to this. Afterwards, the same requirements in. I'll call Ben Noach, When it's Shem Chayuvim, I'll call Ben Noach Alma. There is no requirements on him more than any other Ben Noach. Okay? The Griz says very clearly what we said before, like the Ritva, the only difference between a Ben Noach and a Ger Toshev with regards vis-a-vis mitzvahs, they describe them mitzvahs, is that they have a kabula on it and they become mitzvah oisib. Now, if you become a Ger Toshev, my relationship to you changes as a Jew. There are things that I cannot ask you to do. There are things that I have responsibilities. But the Ger Toshev himself, the non-Jew, there's absolutely no change on him. He's exactly the same as before. Exactly nothing. It's just that he's gone from it's now he's allowed to live amongst us. That's really basically the only thing it is. But then there's requirements on me that I have to support him and stuff like that, and there's all kinds of things required that a Jew would have to do if there was a yovel. But there's not.
And if he's living amongst you, okay, let's face it, he's got to live by your community rules.
Yeah, well, yeah, we could discuss this more because when we get into something about Noahides also, because we today, when I get into the Inion from referring to God, I'm going to go to Rabbi Aaron in his cipher here about what he says about Shittiv, because it's very important. He said he brings a number of paskim and things about it, and it appears he agrees with it there. And that will be very shocking, what he says. Okay, so that's what the Grid says. The Grid says very clearly, there's no, as far as the non-Jew is concerned, there's no mitzvah difference for him. He's exactly the same as beforehand. He can't do any more. He can't. He's not required.
Yeah, so don't start wearing a talit
exactly.
and doing the candle thing and yeah.
He's exactly the same. He doesn't say that when you're Ben Noach, if you get the that there's something about Shittif, we'll talk about Shittif later on when we talk about the things God, there's no difference. The Grid says clearly, that's what the Ritva says, that's what all the Poskim say, there is zero difference between.
Zero.
Okay? Now, the next thing I want to do is, that was the Grid. The Grid has a long discussion here with some other things which were related to it, and it's quite difficult, so I'm not going to go over to you with what's in there. Just want to try and keep it simple, okay? Because
you need to understand though, Rabbi, simple for you is flying way over a lot of people's heads.
Yeah, I understand that, but
we're holding our mud here. So.
I have taught kids from kids who had just learned how to read Hebrew to kids that were in Mishnayos and young men learning Gemara. So I've learned different ages, so I know the difference about that. Okay. Now, the next thing is I do want to go to Rav Soloveitchik, Rav An Soloveitchik, who I, by the way, met. He used to be one of the Rosh Hashivas in YU, and he would come in here every once in a while.
Wow.
So he happened to have been here. A close friend of mine was from Chicago and knew him from there, so he came in when he made bar mitzvah for his oldest son. So I happened to have been by the bar mitzvah, so I got to Sholem. He was very sick at the time, very, very sick. He passed away, I don't remember how many years ago. The years start floating together. I can't remember it that one. But,
I feel that same way from day to day sometimes. I get older.
Yeah. First of all, okay, so the Inion which they talk about is basically chapter 3. You'll see that they take, this has been translated into English, obviously, so they put portions of it. But the question I always ask, well, what this is about. So before I discuss about this, I'm going to tell you what the whole discussion is about. Okay, what he's talking about here was very important. There is a halucha. Okay, what this cipher itself, his son died, Nebuch, and so when we usually don't learn the laws of mourning, except when there's mourning going on. It's not considered good luck to learn it. So if you're sitting shiva, you're mourning.
Makes sense.
Then that's when you learn it. So, as the Talmud Chacham that he was, he learned through it, and his mind's always thinking of Chadisha Torah. I mean, you would have to have met him. He was a very big Talmud Chacham. I mean, a very nice guy, very friendly, but he was a very big Talmud Chacham. So, understanding that, when you're learning through it, your mind goes through it. Okay, so what it is this is a commentary in the part of Shulchan Aruch in Yoredaya, which deals with the laws of mourning. So one of the laws it has there in chapter 335.
335.
It says that we are allowed to go and visit the sick of the idol worshippers. because of Darka Shulam, because of the path. Now, the source of it is actually in the Gemara in the Masechtas Gittin, Samachal 61. Now, that is actually at the end of a sugya here, which starts a few pages earlier with the Mishnah, where the Mishnah starts off saying, these are the things that we say you're allowed to do because of Darka Shulam. Darka Shulam means the ways of peace, meaning that it's very important that the world is peaceful. So there's many things that you do for peace. So the first one they have is, of course, relates to me very much. The law is that the first one he talks about is that when you're calling people up to the Torah, the first person you call up is a Kohen, the second you call up is a Levi, and then you can call up anybody else afterwards. Okay? That is what we do until today. Why? The reason is if you didn't do that, there would be fights in the shul who's going to get Aliyah. But this way, they divide it up that way. So it's made to Darka Shulam. So the next few pages here, this is actually starts on page 59, 59a, and it talks about that. That's what it is. Now, what's interesting to note that when you follow this through, the Moshe brings it because there shouldn't be hatred. It shouldn't. The Moshe is one of the main commentaries on the Gemara. He says the reason is that it shouldn't breed hatred. So, anyways, what's interesting to note, as the real place where this halacha is discussed is in chapter 151, also in Noahide, which deals with the laws of relations with idol worshippers. Mm-hmm. Now he has it up here, and he's going to discuss most of what he discusses. Basically, he brings questions for the Rambam. Some of the things the Rambam has. Now in Shulchan Aruch, it says like here, that's because of Darka Shulam, because of peace. Okay, real places discussed there. It talks about a few things we do for non-Jews. We will bury their dead. We give them with charity and all kinds of things, because there are problems with this, which he discusses sometimes here about things what to do. But anyways, that's what this comes into. It's very halacha. I looked at it. There's a number of interesting questions that come up in that he doesn't actually deal with. He deals with basically Rambam, but there's other questions in halacha. Very interesting. Before I learned this again, I read it before. Before I actually learned it, I went back to the Gemara. I followed it into the Rishonim Achronim, into Shulchan Aruch to see all the things that are going on around it. And then I came to look at here, so it says. Very nice. Yes. Okay. So now, with regards to our idea of the difference between a Ger Toshev and a Ben Noach, he actually talks about this specifically.
Excellent.
Now, where it is, we're talking on page 15 here. Okay. Now, what you have to understand is it's in the middle of a discussion. He has a question on the Rambam based on the Ledvaz. The Rambam paskins that we're allowed to take charity from a non-Jew. And there's questions as to why we should be able to do that. Okay? There's reasons not to do it.
Probably lots.
Yeah. Whatever. It's because there's lots of reasons why we do it, but it's a long discussion here. What I want to do again. So anyways, he discusses it. He brings a number of interesting things. He gives some answers to it. But in the discussion, he talks about this. He says it. But to take tzedukah from a ben noach, okay? Even if ger toshev goma, even if he's not a complete ger toshev. What's mean complete ger toshev? He says it. Shekabel zayin mitzvahs b'nai noach bezman shal yovel noach, who took upon himself the 7 mitzvahs with a novel, because there is no ger. When he says ger toshev goma, it's the same thing as ger toshev to the mitzvah. Okay, when he takes it completely, when there's a base, then is it Mahmat Siva Kuzbut, because it's Shabbat Torah. He adds the Rambam, which is something which is interesting. But from his view, he holds like the Rambam here that it has to be. There's other shit says it doesn't have to be from but he says here, it says Mahmat Siva Kuzbut b'Torah ayidei Moshe Rabbeinu, which is okay. That if he does it, then he is. But we're talking about Ben Noach, who hasn't done it. For that reason, when it talks about at the end of Hilchos Meluchim, that if Ben Noach gives you tzedukah, you can take it, because it doesn't have to be a ger toshev, because even a Ben Noach is also. Why? Use Ben Noach. Why? Because the only difference is Ger Toshev has Kabula, and it can only be when the Yovel is. Otherwise, a Ben Noach, and it's fine. That's why you use a Ben Noach, because there really isn't any Ben Noach around anyway. There's no Yovel. Okay, that's what he says. There's other places where we see it from other in unions, but here's one of the clearest points. Now, there is another halacha that's very well known. It comes up a lot of times. Nowadays, there's no possibility for a Noahide to become a Ben Noach to become a Ger Toshev. It doesn't exist. So what do we do if we have somebody who's real serious Ben Noach,
and wants to live in the land?
He wants to live amongst us. He wants to, there's certain things that living among, the reason there's a machlokes if it's just sufficient that he swears of avodah zura. He's not going to worship idols if he can live among us, and maybe he violates the other one. So maybe he eats Ever Menachai, he eats a living animal, but he doesn't give avodah zura. Could somebody? And most Poskim seem to allow that also, because the main thing is we're afraid of him making us this Noahide, the way the non-Jew making us worship idols. Okay, so in his other discussions, another discussion here, which is really, this is a fascinating discussion. It's real. In Yiddish, we say geschmack. It's like a really good taste. It's really it's beautiful. He asked a question on the Rambam, which is murder. Remember in Shulchan Aruch, it says that the reason why we visit the sick is because of Darkei Shulman. Okay? So that's somewhat of a biblical command. Okay? Darkei Shulman.
Can you explain that a little? Forgive me.
Darkei Shulman is for the sake of peace. We visit non-Jews as well as Jews for the sake of peace. Even though there's restrictions because we don't want to, there's always, we're supposed to be separated, so we're not supposed to learn from them. There's a lot of things we do so that we shouldn't come to meet their daughters and get married and all kinds of stuff like that. There's separations that have to be because of that. Okay, so he brings a Moed Kasha from the Rambam. It's not part of the Lucha, but it's good. The Rambam gives two reasons. Let me see if I can find it here. Page. The Rambam gives two reasons why. One of them is the one because of peace, and the other one is from the side of our compassion. Because the Rambam uses the word Tov Hashem L'chol B'chol. Hashem is good to everyone. So just like Hashem is good to everyone, and we have sort of a moral responsibility to, in all the moralistic literature talks about how we're supposed to imitate Hashem. So he brings two reasons. One, because of the biblical actual command, because of having peace. And the second one is because we want to imitate Hashem. Brings two reasons. The Halacha doesn't follow that. But the Rambam brings two reasons. So he has a whole discussion about that. Revolves around it. It's a very, very beautiful discussion. But he says on page 10, okay, so what happens nowadays, his concept of having compassion, he applies this now to a Noahide. What do we do today with the Noahide? He can't become. So what does he say? Okay. First, he says, he talks about Shitta before, and I don't want to talk about that because that'll confuse him. So he says, what about the non-Jews? Vacation. Im hagoyim shebizmani, and the non-Jews of today, derek-klal hem begeder shel malin, we don't try and kill them. And we're required to save them. The yesh lehem din shel ger toshev l'kitzatz inyonim. We treat these non-Jews, the Noahide, as if they were ger toshev for some things. They're not ger toshev, but we treat them. We give them a din of ger toshev for some things, even though they're not. But they're not a ger toshev, complete ger toshev. It can't be. But even though they're non-Jews, this particular case, by the way, is not talking about Noahides. They're talking about mamish goyim.
Mamish?
Yeah, that has to do with Inion Shittif. I want to leave the Inion of Shittif later for where we talk about because the whole discussion of Shittif belongs really when we talk about the nature of God. But here he's talking about mamish goys, non-Jews, who Christians.
Right. That
we would treat them in some things as if they were like a ger toshev. No, because it's something that's only when the ger toshev, when the yovel. So he says, same thing before, you can only become ger toshev when there's yovel. But even though that's the case, from Rachmunis that we have, we essentially treat them as, in some things, as if they were, as if they were a ger toishev. We allow them to live amongst us and stuff like that, as long as they're not worshiping idols. We'll get into that. The reason why I have to leave that aside because we have to talk about ger toishev. When we talk about God, his shit about those things is something. Okay, so what do we see again? What do we see again? Lavan Solovation also holds the same thing. A Noahide and a ger toishev are essentially the same. The only difference is Kabbalah. And that Kabbalah, unfortunately, we cannot do today. So what we do is, and this is the way Paskin Halacha, we see it all over the place, and your rabbi will say the same thing, Schwartz says, I say the same thing also. We treat a Noahide in some ways as if they were a ger toishev. Not because they are, it's because we have the Chumunis and we treat them. It's not a biblical command. They have no biblical requirements on it, but it's like a rabbinic requirement, just like, we don't eat chicken. We consider chicken meat instead of, even though it's not. Rabbinically, that's chicken is meat. It's considered meat, even though it's not. Okay? Same thing, we consider Noahide as being as if he was like a ger toishev, even he's not. And the things that we created, we don't, that's with. Okay. The bottom line is, again, there are only three categories: goy, benoach, and ger toishev. Ger toishev is not today. That's a brisker Torah, I can say. The brisk says also there's no ger toishev today. There's only a Noahide, and mitzvah, because of our compassion, in some ways we treat a Noahide because the Noahide cannot get out of that category. In some ways we're going to treat him like a ger toishev, even because he can't get out of that category. There's no way he can become a ger toishev so in some ways we treat him like that.
So no dabbling with that notion, or you're bordering on a new religion.
No, it's no. That's just what that's what it is. The Ban says that that's a halacha. You go to anybody else, any rabbi who deals with Noahides, non-Jews who are talking about it will say the same thing. They might not say openly we're doing this because we're treating you as if you're a ger toishev, even though you're not. But underlying basic halacha, that's the way they look at things. And certain issues that'll come up, and we'll discuss some of them. They might come up, maybe we talk the legal part. But so, for example, we allow non-Jews to live in Israel. It's better if you have a Kabbalah, obviously, which is what I know your rabbi gives the Kabbalahs to people in Israel. It's better because it changes the status and it makes it easier to say, okay, you can come. You did the best you can. I mean, you couldn't become a ger toishev, but you did the best you can. So fine. But even with that, you could live there. It's not. But I understand it's a better thing to do. Whatever. This is where rabbis can disagree, and it's fine. It's no big deal. It's not a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. I won't ask. Never mind.
Okay. Now, let's go back to, that was that. Now, I had a discussion, and we had, of course, one of the big things we talked about when talking about what a ger toishev means, in order to understand the disagreements with that came up, because that's a very important issue that gets thrown around. We talked about the Gemara in Avodah Zarah, 64b. Now, one of our friends posted something from the Art Scroll, which is nice. By the way, Art Scroll is very nice, but you just have to know what the Art Scroll is there. It's just to bring you some interesting things. It's not. If you're serious learning, you might look at it, but just say, oh, that's very interesting. Maybe look up. So, for example, it brings a chazan issue. I looked at the chazan issue. Very interesting chazan issue. Very interesting. I'll bring you the what's there, but it's whatever. So, anyways, there's 4 paragraphs here, and
not 1, 4.
4 paragraphs, yeah. So, anyways. Okay, I'm going to read what it has. It's note 13 on 64b. Remember what we learned in 64b? There's 3 views. Rabbi Meir, who says that to be ger toishev, it's sufficient that you swear off idol worship. You could be a robber, you can be a killer, you could be anything else. But as long as you swear off idol worship, you can be a ger toishev. Why? Because a ger toishev means, as the Gedis says, as it says in the Ritva, it says there clearly, the reason ger toishev is because it means you can live amongst us. You're allowed to live amongst us. Doesn't necessarily. It means that you have you have your paper that says you're allowed to live amongst us. Okay, so if you've thrown off idols, that's sufficient to do that, because our real concern is about idol worship. We're not really concerned if you're sleeping with your sister, married to your sister, whether that we're going to learn from you that. But we are more concerned that if you worship idols, you might do that. I mean, it's very simple. That's really that's the view of Rabbi Meir. If you look at all the commentaries on that, they'll say that's what Rabbi Meir was talking about, is that, and you'll see it, that Ovid talks about it. It comes up in a lot of different places. Okay, the second view is the Chachomim, which is the Halacha, as we see from the Ritva, we see from here, that you have to keep. It's the Kabbalah. You accept the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach. Okay, Brisker Torah has it all. They agree with the Gdiz, the Aaron, the Ritva. Everybody agrees that the Halucha Lamasa is to be a real Ger Toshav. When Yovel comes, you have to all the 7. Okay, we don't put them. And then there's a third view from the Chaydim, which is not in Halucha, and that is that everything except eating Nevaila, because it says in the Torah you're supposed to give Nevaila to the Ger Toshav, so Nevaila seems to be something you're supposed to eat.
But the Nevaila is you'll throw it away if
non-kosher meat. It's non-kosher meat.
Yeah, yeah. So if you can't give it to the ger, which you said there isn't a ger, it's garbage.
Yeah. So, anyways, the note 13 apparently goes off where it says in the Gemara about that he accepts upon him the 7 mitzvahs. Okay. So I'm going to read the English. Those of you who have it there. But these are the 7 universal laws, the Noahide Code. Notice the article uses Noahide Code also.
There you go.
I guess they don't know either, but it's a name. I don't know who started. I believe it's actually started from non-Jews, and everybody just said, "Okay, fine, that's good." It doesn't make it. It's just the word you want to use. I mean, a rose by any other name smells as sweet. It's what it is. They include the obligation to establish courts of law, and the prohibitions against idolatry, sexual immorality, murder, blasphemy, thievery, and consumption of limbs torn from a live animal. This is from 756a. That's the whole sugya in Torah. The sages say that a Ger Toshav is one who formally undertakes to keep these 7 commandments. It's the Ritva. If you formally take upon yourself to do it, you're called a Ger Toshav. That's what the Chachomim say it is. Okay. However, he continues, in fact, all non-Jews, even those who accept nothing upon themselves, are commanded to fulfill the laws. We saw that mentioned in the Gdiz. We saw in other places. Everybody knows that this is simple. This is no big deal.
It's morality, yeah.
However, only formal commitment renders one's a Ger Toshav with regard to being eligible for sustenance support. He says, Ber Halucha from the Mishnah B'Yah 304.3, which we will discuss when we talk about Shabbos and Noahides. Likewise, with regard to Rabbi Meyer's view that a Ger Toshav is one who undertakes not to worship idols, although all people are forbidden idol worship, only a formal commitment places one in the category of Ger Toshav. So you have to formally say you're not going to do it. Otherwise, you're not a Ger Toshav, you're just a Ben Noach. That's all. Fine. Okay. Now, he brings a view from the next paragraph is from the Chazan. Now, somehow or other from this, we get the idea that there's actually 3 types of Ger Toshav. Because Rabbi Meyer gives his view, Chum gives his view, and the Chaim gives his view, that there's 3 types. That's not true. It's 3 opinions. The Halucha says only one of them is correct. So if I say that this sefer is green, and someone says it's blue, and someone says it's like reddish, right? It doesn't have 3 colors. There's 1 color, it's red. That's the true color. Halucha means that's the true answer. A lot of opinions in the Talmud doesn't mean that it's the true answer is that it's the Chacham, Father Chachamim, Ritva, Gdiz, Rab Aaron. Everybody agrees on that. There's no whatever. Again, we'll talk about the Ber Haitiv and stuff like that. That's a different story.
Yeah, I find some people.
When we talk about the next lesson that we're going to do, I'm going to talk about Shabbos because that's something on its own, and we'll discuss about, and we will talk about 304.
All right.
There's a very, very misunderstood Mogan of Rum, which the Ber Hulucha is based on, and nobody talks about that. Okay. So anyway, like I was going to make. Okay. So alternatively, and I'm going to read you the little paragraph here that's in from the Chazon Ish also because it's beautiful. The Torah is yoga shmak sometimes. If you like to learn, you just got it. Okay. Ultimately, the formal commitment before based in was an innovation established in response to the nation's abandonment of the 7 Noahide Laws. Now, the problem here is, unless you know what he's talking about, this doesn't make sense to you. What he's talking about is before the Torah was given. Okay? And I'll show in the Chazon Ish because he alludes to that also. Bava Kama talks about that before the Torah was given, the non-Jewish people had already abandoned it. Had already abandoned the 7 mitzvahs. They were killing, murdering, doing all kinds of different idol worship, everything was rampant. They already abandoned it. So Hashem said, okay, fine, it's no longer a commandment. Which is, again, what we had beforehand. The Ritva talked about that. As far as Lamasa has a different treatment Ben Noach, but it comes from this idea. In early times when the laws were universally observed, every non-Jew was considered a Ger Toshav, meaning that earlier when they first gave it, when the commands were first given, they did it because it was commanded. But then they gave up doing it. So if they gave up doing it, the command was taken away. That's what he's talking about here. Okay, and we'll see. We're going to. This is a Chazon Ish. I'll go into the Chazon Ish. Once the nation forsook the Noahide, the rabbis instituted a process. Once the nations forsook the Noahide, the rabbis instituted a process by which an individual who wished to be regarded as a Guarantor would formally undertake to cleave to these laws. Chazon Ish, meaning after the Torah was given. We're going to see what he says there. Now, what does the Chazon Ish say? Just one paragraph in the middle. He's got a number of interesting discussions here. He's talking about different laws as far as Chosh and Mishpat, mean laws of as far as judging, things like that. So he talks about an interesting thing. We know that the law is, well, we're going to come at the judgment. A Ben Noach is killed from one judge, one witness. It can be even the same person.
Wow.
Okay?
Even the same person.
Even the same person.
Ooh, that's arbitrary.
However, he says, and this is talking interesting, I'm not sure that everybody holds this way, that the judge, mitzvahs. He has to keep the 7 commandments. Haini is a ger toishev. What does that mean? Mitzchila. Mitzvahs. In the beginning, when the 7 mitzvahs are given, it was given that everybody should be careful about that. So since it was a command, everybody who was a ger toishev essentially had to get of a ger toishev. They didn't have to accept it upon themselves. Why? Because everybody kept it. It's like,
there you go. Yeah.
You the United States of America, okay, we have traffic laws. They don't ask you, you don't have to go to court and say, I accept upon myself the traffic laws of the state of New York. You don't have to. You live here. You're required because you live here.
Yes.
Okay. You accept
even if you move from another state.
Right. So the same
transfer your license.
Before Matan Torah, the case was that everybody was required to do from Noahide clause, but they abandoned it, so it was taken away from them. So in the beginning, because they were all doing, because they were commanded, they did it because of the commandment. They were commanded, so they were like all ger toishev. Later, when they stopped doing it, they lost it all, and the only way they could become a ger toishev again was to do an acceptance upon themselves. Okay.
Very good explanation.
She'imez shleimus loy kaim oisen, because afterwards, when the nations did not keep it anymore, b'shas matan Torah, when the Torah was given, it doesn't say that here, but that's the key part from that he leaves out of here in the article. That's what I'm saying. The article is very nice, but you have to understand, if you want to know clear, you have to be able to look at the sources. It's a nice thing to read, but it's not, if you're lamdan, if you're somebody who learns, it's not. So it says, unless you knew that beforehand, which I knew beforehand, I knew what he was talking about, so I found the Chazon Ish. Well, kaima oisen b'shas matan, okay. Kaima oisen b'shas matan Torah is yachad din ger toishev. When the Torah was given, then there came the din from ger toishev, that he has to accept by 3. So what happened is, before the Torah was given, originally by Noah, every descendant of Noah, for a while until they abandoned, were ger toishev, because they had the command, they knew they were commanded, and they did it because of the command. Later they worshipped idols and they stopped. It was taken away. So if you kept it, it's not, you don't have the command to do it, but God wants you to, you're required to do it, but you don't have the command. It's not really a command, but you're going to get punished if you don't do it, okay? Then what happens is, when the Torah was given, it came back again, yes, this is what's happening, and if you don't do it, if you want to be ger toishev, you have to have a kabul. Otherwise, you'll be ben noach. Okay, the last paragraph says, I'll just talk,
wow. And this works with my own research.
Let me show you the last paragraph. Although the sages were silent regarding the circumstances of ger's toshev's commitment, they too hold that it must take place before a basis of 3 chavadim, which we've talked about. They dispute only regarding which commandments he must accept. But in this matter, they agree. So the only difference between the Chachamim and Rabbi Meir is, Rabbi Meir says 1 is enough. The Chum say 7. That's all. That's all. That's only it. Okay, that's it. And he says the same with others. It's awesome. The whole issue has to be the kabul has to be before a basis of 3. Okay, that's that. Those are the Chazon Ish is
profound stuff in there for us, Noahide.
Very good shmat. I mean, these aren't new things to anybody who's learned these issues. Okay.
Well, they're new to us. A lot of it are new to us.
Really learned the issues knows exactly what it's talking about there. If you didn't learn it, well, whatever. Okay, so that's that. That's the art score. Now. How long have we been talking for?
We're just over an hour in, Rabbi.
Um,
We can go if you want to go another hour. I'm game, but my spouse is at work. So
no, I did promise somebody I would actually read and translate something here. There's a reference in Rav Soloveitch's work, which I really don't understand what he's trying to say, because the text actually doesn't say that. He says in Sefer Yedidim, he says in Sefer Yedidim, this is what it says here, but it's not a quote. Other places where he quotes from a Sefer, he puts it in quotations, it doesn't say. It says, I am B'Yidim, Simon Reish Lamed Gimel in 233. Shakusim she'im ger Mekayim, im goy Mekayim zayin mitzvahs. If he keeps the 7 commandments, nechshav l'ger toishiv, he's considered like a ger toishiv. In mitzav unich yosam afilu lo b'zban yovel, and we're commanded to give him sustenance when it's not to tell you. That's not exactly what it says. I'm not sure what he means by it, but let me tell you. Let me read you what it's talking in the Yidam, and maybe we can figure out what he's trying to say. It doesn't say that there. It doesn't say that the Yidam is saying.
It's tough to follow a fragmented mind.
Yeah,
it is.
No, it's not that. It's just it doesn't say that exactly what he says here. He doesn't say that we're required to give him sustenance as if it was the idol. But he does say something here, which maybe that's what he's trying to get at. It's not what it says there, but okay. Sefer Yedidim is one of those forms that were written that deals with the commandments of the Torah. So what he does is each paragraph is a different mitzvah that he talks about. Somewhat Sefer Chenech. Now, 234. One second. One page here. I'm sorry. I took it backwards. Okay. I put it the English way, and I'm looking at it like it's Hebrew. Okay. 233. So I put it on that side, and I thought I put it on the right side so I can open it correctly. Now it opens the wrong way, so I'm confused. Okay. Now the mitzvah he's talking about is a kim mipnai shaiva ahada pnai zukim. There is a commandment to show respect for an older person. That you're supposed to stand up before a person.
Respect your elders, yes.
This is Parshat Kedoshim. Now he brings from the Talmud. The Talmud says, "Isi ba Yehida Omer, V'mlai Shava Tukum." You should stand before an older person. Kol Shaiva Mash. Anybody who's old. A filu goy, even a non-Jew. Ach shekayim shav mitzvahs. As long as he keeps the 7 commandments. So if a non-Jew is old and he's somebody you know that he keeps the 7 commandments, you have to stand up for him.
Wow.
Chasidi Emes Oilam, that he's from the Chasidi Emes Oilam. So if he's an old person, Chasidi Emes Oilam, he's supposed to. Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says, Halucha ki Isa ben Yehuda. The Halucha is like Isa ben Yehuda, and the Gemara brings a story like it. Abaya kui kamai sabe deramoy. The Abaya, one of the Amoraim, stood up before an old Aramean. Pedish, what does it mean? Shekayim sheva mitzvahs shekabulayim b'nai noach. That he kept the 7 mitzvahs. Uman damer b'ayim alone, the haviger toishiv l'kasha. And if you mean that it's somebody who just like Rabbi Meir only says has to be a Avodah Zarah, that's also to be a Ger Toishiv, meaning that he's only sufficient for that. That's also no problem. To be Kamokam, Aramui, he's called an Aramui.
He's called a what?
Aramui sometimes means somebody like somebody's not a non-Jew. Yeah. Anyways, that's what it said. After that, he doesn't talk about Ger Toishiv anymore. I think what he's trying to say is that maybe what Aaron is trying to say, it doesn't say about this, but I think what he's trying to bring out of this is we see here, similarly, like remember the Sefer Chassidim I quoted to you, where he doesn't say he calls it Ger Toishiv, but we treat him almost as like he's a Ger Toishiv, as the Ravan said, that we give him katzatz, some of the dinim like a Ger Toishiv. I think what he's trying to say here is that from here we see that we treat him like he's a Ger Toishiv, even if he's not. But the language here is not what it says in Sefer Yedidim. That's all. There was a whole discussion about that. Anyways,
Yet,
that's
yet,
that.
yet, wisdom would never treat self as entitled.
Yeah.
I mean, it just doesn't function that way.
Okay. Now, what I wanted to talk about is another Indian about learning Torah, but I think
Yes.
I'll leave that for next week because I spent a lot of time going very deeply into some of this stuff. So we will have a class next.
All right. Sounds good. I'm excited.
Now, as far as Hanukkah, I have to find out when my wife's working at night, and also to see if we can do it. So, because maybe we'll do some,
You're going to show us a special Hanukkah in
no,
your
I have,
home.
I have to light Hanukkah light afterward. I have to light them anyways. So maybe I'll just put it on you, see how Hasidim do it, and then afterwards I'll talk about Hanukkah and some things. I mean, Hanukkah is not. A non-Jew doesn't have to light the candles and stuff like that. It has nothing to do with that. It's a rabbinic thing anyways. There's no rabbinic.
Say that clearly. A non-Jew does not have to.
No, it has nothing to do with it. However, there's some messages about Hanukkah that I think are very good lessons for non-Jews.
Right.
Okay? Especially those who be Noahide. I think those Noahides that love Christianity, there's a lot about Hanukkah that they may feel themselves that it relates to them. So I think I'll talk about that.
All right. That's exciting. So, folks, that's some good stuff coming up in the next few weeks. We appreciate you being willing to do that, Rabbi. That means a lot to me anyways. I mean, we had, like I said, earlier this year, we had forgive me, my tongue's tied.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, were there any questions from anybody they had just on what I did until now?
You know what? Nothing serious that I couldn't handle on the chat, Rabbi. But I mean, there was a lot of questions about Noahides were asking about clarity about din. Is it possible to go before 3 rabbis? Does it formally make them a Noahide? They don't.
Yeah. You're a Noahide.
These sort of things, and
you're essentially a Noahide if you want to keep the commandments. And although the Litva doesn't say it nowadays, basically, if you want to keep the commandments because it says in the Torah, like the Rambam, that's basically what it's come to mean. It's a little more stricter than the real actual definition, which is basically a Noahide would be somebody who's keeping the 7 commandments, even if he doesn't think about it. But nowadays, the Noahide movement is pretty much by themselves agreed that, we're doing it because of the Torah. So, that's fine. I mean,
you had mentioned that there is a...
If I came across somebody who was keeping it, I don't know how you can keep it without believing in the Torah, but if such a thing actually happened, then I have to say, okay, fine, that's so you did it. You wouldn't be from the Hasidim Oilem according to the Rambam, but that's a different story. And what Hashem's going to do, that's a different story himself. He has his own cheshbon. He has his own calculations. I don't even get into that.
Above us all.
It says in Devorim, it says, Nisturas Hashem Elakaini, v'nigos luni levenani ad oilam. The Nisturas Hashem Elakaini, the hidden things are to Hashem our God. Those things are hidden for Him. V'nigos, those things are revealed to us. The Torah which was given to us, the Torah that we have that's openly, is for us and for our children forever. We can only make decisions based on the Torah that we have. Hashem, we don't tell him what to do.
No.
He's the boss. The boss does what he wants. Okay, if he wants to throw out, by the way, this is one of the biggest errors that I know from Christians have about Hashem. They don't understand this. When we say that Hashem is a judge, a true judge, that doesn't mean that he doesn't have compassion. The exact opposite case. Okay? What it means is he's not going to punish you more than what you deserve. You don't
That's right.
more. But if for some reason he decides that he's going to forgo the punishment, hey, that's his business.
He is Hashem.
And if he decides not to forgo it, and he's going to give it to you, you're going to get it. So then you only have to worry about what we're supposed to do. You worry about what you're supposed to do. And he'll take care of his job, and you take care of your job, and that's basically what it's about.
Wow. Okay, Kat says, I feel like I made a vow to God and then look toward the Torah via a rabbi to understand what God means. Am I close? And she puts a question mark.
Again, as long as you keep the 7 commandments, then it's fine. Okay, but if you want to do it the proper way, you should do it because it says in the Torah, which means you're going to need guidance from a rabbi for a while, and then
This is
until
what you mentioned.
until basically you know what to do. Once you know what to do, basically you live. I mean, this is a discussion I'm going to have later on, but it's like this.
That's right.
It says in the Gemara, the Torah wasn't given to angels. The Torah was given to human beings. Okay, human beings. What do? They get up they sleep at night. They get up in the morning. Okay, they eat. They do normal things. Say I'm drinking. They do normal things. They enjoy their lives. Okay, they like football season, right? They enjoy.
Some of us, even up here in Canada.
Okay, I don't know. I have no idea what's going on with that, but
Of course not.
There's football. Yeah. There's football. People like
basketball and
whatever. That's not the point. The point is that you're in this world.
Yes.
Judaism is not about asceticism. Judaism is about enjoying your life, eating. Excuse me. We'll get to this later on, but so you have to understand. Just it's being the normal life. It's like that's what it's about.
Yeah, as long as we're not, asceticism can be such a dangerous thing, and the piety that people imagine is a false sense of piety, opposed to what the rabbis teach.
This idea is going to come up a lot when we discuss it, because remember, I do want to concentrate not just on the legal aspects, but the legal aspects are relatively simple to learn, and if once you start thinking along the lines you're supposed to be thinking, you'll understand yourself many of the things you're not supposed to do. But the question is, there's a lot of things besides that. What it means. You want to be close to Hashem. What it means close to Hashem. Next week I'll start talking a little bit about that, and we'll start. Okay, so next week I want to talk about ideas that have to do with learning Torah. That I talked a little bit about, but I want to talk about some more issues because that also has come up a lot. Because there are laws as to why non-Jews aren't allowed in certain things. I want to give you an idea behind that, even though we're going to discuss more in depth about the Inion of learning, what you're allowed to learn, exactly how you learn, whatever, later on. But I want to just cover very quickly.
Well, that's exciting. We appreciate
that will be the lesson when we talk about theft, because that's where the Talmud talks about it.
Yeah, and that reaches into so many veins of living.
That always sounds bizarre. But I'm going to try and keep things in the place where the Talmud talks about it, not where we would think it would be a nice place to talk about it. So I want to talk about it there, so you get because I want you to have the perspective of what the rabbis actually teach, what they really mean by it. Okay.
Excellent. Okay, well, we're about an hour and 20 minutes almost, Rabbi. Over an hour and 15 minutes. Shall we call it a day until next week?
Yeah, that's fine. Till next week. That's okay.
All right, folks. Well, thanks for tuning in, everybody who tuned in. And until next Tuesday, 7 o'clock Eastern time is what we're aiming for. Till then, have a great week.